Good morning, students. It's good to be here. Sorry, I could not get the recording of the class that I had taken today. So I'm sending you the recording of this teaching that I have done today to you so that you will be able to follow it up in your app. So we were doing Blenheim. This was after Blenheim, and we were telling about Peterkin bringing rolling a ball-like structure that was a skull of a person, a man who had died in the battle. And so when he comes to his grandpa to ask him what it is, so grandfather tells him this was one of the person who had died in the battleground, and he has so many of them are there lying in the field, and whenever he plows the field, he sees the skulls coming out of the people who lost their lives in the great victory over with the Britishers and French. So the one phrase that he tells is, "It was a famous victory." So we were yesterday. Robert Southey has brought out the age gap, generation gap that we tell it between the grandchildren and the grandfather. When we look at the grandchildren are hardly maybe few, not even 10 years old, whereas the grandfather must be somewhere around 60 or 70-year old. So there's a generation gap between the two thinkers, the children and the grandfather. So when we look at here, children are very innocent, and very innocently they're asking the grandfather what was the cause of the war and why was the war took place. They were not worried about that it was a famous victory for Britishers. For them, the war is a wicked thing. That is what the thinking of the young generation is. But for yeah, old Casper, it is not that way. He says, if you have to win war, they have to lose their lives. People have to lose their life. Innocent people have to die. The women have to die. Then only they can win the war. So it was a famous victory for them. He shows no concern over the loss of lives. He has no sympathy and concern and compassion for the people who were lost in this. He has no concern. He himself has lost his house while he had to run with his father and mother when the Britishers came to burn their houses. So, but in spite of all this, he says it was a famous war, a famous victory. And then he says, seventh standard is says, my father lived at Blenheim, yon little stream hard by. They burnt his dwelling to the ground, and he was forced to fly. So with his wife and child he fled, nor had he where to rest his head. Now he says, he himself was a young boy, maybe about 10 or 11-year old. He had to run with his father. He says, my father, old Casper's father, he was young that time. They were living at Blenheim. There was a cottage, and near his home there was a stream for the water to be used by the family. And therefore he says, when the Britishers came, their dwelling was burnt, their house was burnt. The father, mother, and Casper had to run for their life. They didn't know where they are going to take the rest for the night. And this is what, under such situation, they were running. Now, when we look at verse stanza 8, with fire and sword, the country round was wasted at far and wide. Now, there are two things in the war. You have burning of the houses, so you have the fire. Killing of the people, you have the sword. People use swords to bluntly kill the people, innocent lives. They did not bother the lady is pregnant. They did not bother the children are 1 year or 2 year or 3 year old, or they are babies. They just simply use their swords to bloodshed, and innocent people lost their lives. So the two things which the poet is trying to tell us, Robert Southey, he says, fire and sword. Fire to burn the house, sword to brutally kill the people. This was all a waste. Why did they do that? And many a childing mother who is pregnant with the babies, okay, and a newborn baby died. Okay, babies also lost their lives. Newborn babies, the pregnant women, they were all killed. But things like that, must be. Now he says, but things like this, so if you have to win the war, such things have to take place. And therefore, when these people are killed, then only it became a famous victory. We go on stanza 9, it says, they say it was a shocking sight of the bloodshed and the head lying somewhere else, the limbs lying somewhere else, the hand lying somewhere else, the legs lying somewhere else, half of the body one side and the head is somewhere else. They're all scattered. You cannot imagine whose head is this and whose body is this. And they were just all scattered. So therefore, it was a shocking sight. And after the field was won, field here refers to the Battle of Blenheim, which was won by the Britishers. For many thousand bodies here lay rotting in the sun. Now here, you put anything in the sun, now it rots. And even if you keep anything in the home these days, and if you do not put any eatables in your fridge, if any vegetable fry or any of the things that your mother has cooked, if she doesn't put them in the fridge, and if she sees it, morning she has cooked and evening she sees, she has to throw it because it gets spoiled because of the summer season. Now you can imagine the body is just lying scattered in the rotting sun, and the sun's rays just falling on those rotten bodies. They were just rotting. The flesh was just, cooked away in the hot sun. And then the skulls just lying like that. And when it rain came, maybe when the thunder and lightning came, their bodies were just buried with the sand or the sandstorm which came there. So therefore it says, for many thousand bodies, no number is mentioned, thousand bodies, many thousands. It cannot be 1,000, it cannot be 2,000, it can be many, 30, 40,000, 70,000, 80,000, not able to count. But things like that, when such things happen, and the rotten bodies, when the people have given their life, then only you get the victory. So he says here, but things like that, again, he says, what are the things like that? People losing, innocent people losing their life, losing their property, losing their homes, losing their children, losing their families, then only you get a famous victory. We go on stanza 10. Great praise the Duke of Marlborough won and outgot Prince Eugene. So he says, praise was given to Marlborough, Duke of British's general, and Prince Eugene. They were together fighting against the French. They have not mentioned the French general's name here. They're only mentioning the generals of British Army. So why it was a wicked thing? Okay, for Wilhelmine, war is a wicked thing, and definitely being a child, if she sees somebody fighting, she will just hide and not come out. So that's a fearful thing for the small girl. So therefore she says, why it was a very wicked thing. Sad little Wilhelmine. Wilhelmine is disturbed when she hears from her grandfather the kind of many bodies lying in the field. She said it was a wicked thing. She does very wicked thing. Nay, nay, my little girl, quoth he. He here is grandfather, old Casper. No, not my little girl, grandfather is saying. My granddaughter, no, it's not that. It was a famous victory. Now we see here, old Casper is not bothered about the feeling of the child, which who says it's a wicked thing. He's not worried about when Peter King says, "What was the cause of the war? Why was the war fought?" And he just says, changes the topic. He says it was a famous victory. So here we see he's not bothered about the feelings of the other person. He has no compassion for the people who lost their lives and the people whose house were burned. But only thing he's taking his comfort whilst by saying it was a famous victory. And 11th stanza, and everybody praised the Duke. Now, who are everybody in this? I know it cannot be French people. Uh, but I know it has to be the British people who were very happy, who were rejoicing, who were celebrating the victory which the Britishers got over Blenheim village, Blenheim nearby places, in and around these areas. They were very happy. So they were praising the Duke of Marlborough and praising Prince Eugene. And he says, everybody, it's not the French people, it's only the British people who were praising the Duke and the Prince, who this great fight did win. Okay. Prince Eugene and Duke of Marlborough were responsible for winning the Battle of Blenheim. But what good came of it at last, quoth little Peterkin. I said, he says, what good come out of it? What? Anything, any benefit? Something that the people can be proud of. Okay, this war was fought, and this is a benefit for this group. This is a benefit for these people. In this way, the people got, they were very happy. They were rejoicing. Nobody was rejoicing. Especially the people who lost the battle. The French people did not rejoice. They lost much, much more than what they expected. And here, grandfather says, why I cannot tell that? I do not know the reason why the war took place, but I only know it was a famous victory. So you can see here, grandfather is not able to quench the inquisitive mind of the children. Okay, the inquisitive mind of Peterkin and Wilhelmine. Now, children, they are very curious to know, and they, if you talk to a 3-year-old or a 4-year-old, they will have, for every little thing, they will have why. And if you don't satisfy their curiosity by answering them lovingly, they will never come to you. They will never be close to you. So we have to be very careful, when we have to satisfy the children. And here the curiosity of Peterkin and Wilhelmine is left unsettled, unsolved by grandfather. The grandfather has only said it was a famous victory. So when grandfather says it was a famous victory, we see here he only understands his uh, part of life. He does not understand the mind of uh, Peterkin and Wilhelmine, the children being innocent, but they still can understand that when grandfather says the bodies were rotting in the sun, the bodies lay scattered, his home was burnt, there was bloodshed, there were fire and sword. When he was telling this, the children were able to understand all that. When Peterkin brought the skull, he understood and he said, okay, there are many more skulls lying in my field. When I use the plowshare, those heads come out. Okay. He understands that, but he wants to know what is the reason for the war and who benefited from the war. It was not the French who were defeated. It was the Britishers who were enjoying at the cost of the lives lost in the Battle of Blenheim. So we see here the question is left unsolved. But here it opens our eyes that when Wilhelmine says, war is a wicked thing. Yes, war is a wicked thing. So we'll continue on Monday with Merchant of Venice. He will go with that. All the best. Take care.